Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast. Today on the show, a conversation with Sunny Verma of Locked On Illini. We're going to talk all things Terrence Shannon Jr., what his role was at Illinois, what he improved on most over his 2 seasons at the University of Illinois, and also what I expect Shannon to do at the NBA level. We'll also hit some other Wolves and notes. It's all upcoming. Welcome in. You are Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Happy Thursday, everybody. Today on the show, conversation with me and Sunny Verma of Locked On Illini. We're going to talk about Terrence Shannon Jr. in college. A fun conversation, a couple things that I didn't realize that he feels like are strengths of Terrence Shannon, and he backs up a lot of what we talked about the last couple of weeks in terms of his defense, actually more of an optimistic look at his defense than I had on the show back after the Wolves drafted him. We'll also talk about what he could do in transition, what he could do in the half court, and talk a little bit about what I think his role will be. Basically, I asked Sunny a handful of questions. Sunny asked me some questions. We'll do all that. And then at the end of the show, I got a couple other Wolves news and notes that came out. I'll give my take on a couple of things here from the last couple of days here. So all that's upcoming. A big thank you off the top for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere, including YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on Roku and Amazon Fire TV. And you can also follow on X at Locked On T-Wolves and also at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, CK. All right, we're going to jump right into my conversation with Sunny. Let's get to that here without further ado. All right, as promised, conversation crossover between Locked On Wolves and Locked On Illini. Myself, Sunny Verma. We're going to talk a little bit of Terrence Shannon Jr. and what he brought to Illinois when he was there. And then we'll talk about his potential role in the NBA. Will he be in the Wolves rotation? What will he do for the Timberwolves this year? So, I mean, Sunny, so Terrence Shannon spent his final 2 years at Illinois. He spent 3 years at Texas Tech, a couple years at Illinois. He was a relative unknown unless you're a hardcore college basketball fan until he got to Illinois, and then really kind of exploded. You look at his 2 years with the Illini, and he had barely averaged in double figures his last year at Texas Tech in 21-22. The scoring spiked. Certainly his second to last year with Illinois, but then of course this year he's one of the best players in the country over the first few months. And I guess, like, for Wolves fans, for listeners who didn't follow him closely in college, or maybe only saw him maybe when he played against the Gophers, sure. What should Timberwolves fans know about Terrence Shannon Jr.? What do you see from him as a player, or what did you see from him over his 2 years at Illinois?
I think I talked about this actually on my own show. Whatever team that was lucky to draft him should know that whatever his potential is, he's going to reach it. Because he's not one of those people that's going to become lackadaisical once he signs that contract and just kind of, go with the flow type of thing. No, he was a guy who was constantly the star of all of Illinois', like the official university social media campaigns, because they'd film him basically shooting jumpers at 5 a.m, 7 a.m. The guy was a complete workhorse. And as you talked about, essentially every single year in his career, he continued to get better. There was a different facet of his game that continued to get better. The guy is super athletic. He's had an NBA body for 2 seasons now in college basketball, which kind of leads into why he was so successful. He was just bigger and stronger than most of the guys that he was going up against. And so, if we're talking about, what kind of guy he is, it's just that he's a pure hustler, and he's a guy who won't leave anything out on the floor. We'll leave everything out on the floor. Sorry.
Yeah, no, and that's great to hear. I mean, that's something that, like, if fans are just looking at highlight reels or scouting reports online, they're not necessarily going to get all of that, which is exactly, what fans want to hear, is that he's going to reach, because you look at, I know he's a 5-year college player, so he's a little bit older in terms of NBA prospects, but somebody who averaged 23 points a game last year, 17 points a game the year prior, like, clearly there's massive potential there. And so to hear that he's somebody who's going to reach that potential, or at least work to reach that potential, is huge. What would you say from year one at Illinois, which was his fourth year of college basketball, to year two at Illinois? What was his biggest growth point? Like, what do you think he did, that much better in his final year than he did in his first year at Illinois?
I mean, it was his shooting. He did the NBA draft camps last year, and that's kind of the feedback that he got, that he needed to work on his 3-point shooting a little bit. And there were some questions about his back. So his first couple of seasons at Texas Tech, he missed significant portions of the season because he had some sort of back issues. Now, you wouldn't know this, but like Illinois has one of the best strength and fitness guys in their locker room. And so his name's Adam Fletcher. He basically took Terrence Shannon, and for the 2 seasons, Terrence had almost zero issues with his back. So it looks like that is kind of healed. And so basically it was just his shooting from 3-point land, from the corners. That's kind of because he always had the NBA body. He's got NBA defense, NBA strength, NBA athleticism. But in order to, the NBA has kind of become a 3-and-D league. And the key part of Shannon developing was the 3 part. And that's kind of what he did last season.
Yeah, and to your point, first year at Illinois, he shot 32.1% from 3. Last year, 36.2%. And if you just glance at his numbers, his last year at Texas Tech, he shot 38%, but the volume was a lot lower. He attempted just like sheer volume of threes almost twice as many his first year at Illinois versus his last year at Texas Tech. So, the 38% is a little bit misleading. But then last year, he attempted nearly 3 times as many threes as he did last year at Texas Tech, and he was still north of 36%. So if that continues to progress to the NBA 3-point line, that's obviously a huge, and the Wolves are banking on that. And you mentioned the NBA body. That's kind of the first thing I've said when I've been asked about what he brings to the Timberwolves, what they're looking for. It's that he looks the part. He looks like he can be, at the very least, a solid perimeter defender, maybe be able to guard at the point of attack a little bit, and should be an absolute terror in transition. It seems like that could be his biggest impact initially at the NBA level. And correct me if I'm wrong, but he did a ton of damage in transition, both from beyond the arc and also at the rim.
That's what he was best at in the college level. Once he got a quick rebound, there was nobody better in the league in transition of just kind of putting his head down and attacking the rim. I mean, he scared a lot of the guys basically defending him. And I think that's what he's going to kind of do ultimately in the NBA. He's a guy who his defensive numbers fell a little bit his senior year, but that's only because he was asked to carry so much on the offensive end. He was the focal point. We had him guard the best guy, also being our number one option, to score the basketball. In the NBA, when you have guys who are, Anthony Grant, and no one's going to ask Terrence Shannon to score even double figures. The idea, I'm assuming, is going to be, hey, make a basket here and there, grab the outlet rebound, go do your thing, what you just did in college. But most importantly, and I know you guys were one of the best defensive teams in the league already last year, he's going to, if you tell Terrence, hey, expend most of your energy guarding and harassing the guy that you're defending that night, he's going to absolutely excel in that role. And that's why I think he's going to be a Minnesota Timberwolves fan favorite very quickly.
Yeah, so I actually, you mentioned 2 things I was going to ask you about, and I guess let's talk about the defense first, because you kind of finished there. I was going to ask you what your overall impressions were for him on defense. I think I saw at least one scouting report out there when I was kind of cramming on Terrence Shannon around the time of the draft, that there was some concern that maybe the effort wasn't always there at Illinois, where maybe it was greater, at least maybe year 1 in Illinois or back to Texas Tech years. And to your point, it sounds like some of that could be because he was carrying so much of the load offensively. He was such a high usage player on offense for Illinois. And then, just looking at the numbers, I like to look at steal rate as a good indicator of defensive activity. And the steal rate was certainly down last year over where it was year 1 in Illinois. But would you chalk most of that up to A, carrying a huge load on offense, and B, having a really difficult assignment night in and night out, really on both ends of the floor, but also defensively?
Exactly right. He was always, when it was time, if there's a minute and a half left in the game, in a close game, he's the guy guarding their best player. And for the most of the time, he ended up on the winning end. Like, he's just that guy. Throughout the game, sure, sometimes things happen. And again, when you're carrying the load offensively, his numbers may have struggled a little bit. And truth be told, Illinois' defense in general this past season wasn't very good. We were number one in offense for most of the college basketball season, but the defensive end really started sliding once the month of January hit, and so his numbers included. But I don't think it's an effort issue necessarily, and I truly think that once he gets to the next level and he's told by the coach, hey, just focus on defense, I think he's going to absolutely excel at that role.
That's great to hear. I mean, like you said this a few minutes ago, like the Wolves do have multiple point of attack defenders who he's not going to be. They're not going to ask him to go guard, insert he's not going to guard John Morant one night and Kevin Durant the next or whatever. It's they've got Jaden McDaniels who an all defensive team caliber player. Rudy Gobert obviously is not guarding on the perimeter, but he's on the floor, so he's papering over if guys get beat on the perimeter. But Jaden McDaniels, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Anthony Edwards are all plus perimeter defenders, and then you add in some of the other length that they have, even guys like Karl-Anthony Towns who can switch on the perimeter and stuff like that. It's just really it's length and athleticism and again, an NBA body. Offensively, we talked about what he does in transition. You talked about his improvement as a 3-point shooter in the half court. So not in transition. When things slow down there in the half court, it seems like he had the ball in his hands a ton. Was he really initiating a lot of offense? Was it a lot of shooting out of pick and roll, or what? Or how would you describe his half court game with Illinois?
I actually wouldn't say he had the ball all that often unless it was one of those in transition. Again, let's kind of give the ball to Terrence and move out of the way, let him go get a basket. I mean, if you take a look, I think he averaged almost 9 free throws a game in his last season and shooting almost 80%. The whistle follows him wherever he goes. He's very good at initiating contact and getting to the free throw line. And when he gets there, he tends to hit them. Brad Underwood always liked to joke around all season long that all year long he never ran a single play for Terrence Shannon Jr. It was simply one of those where either through sheer hustle he got involved with the play. He developed a catch and shoot 3-pointer in his final season at Illinois. So it's one of those where it's perfect for Minnesota because you have so many weapons as it is, and he's not really going to get in the way of a guy like Anthony Edwards. It's basically he'll be able to fill whatever niche you're looking for on the offensive side. And for me, when I watch the NBA, I do love guys who can get contact, who can get fouls on the opposing team and, get them in foul trouble. And that's something Terrence has always been really, really good at.
Yeah. And I've kind of been talking about his fit with Minnesota, and we'll get into this here in a second, a little bit more in depth, but I mean, they're not going to ask him to do too much. It's going to be, hey, knock down threes, play in transition, play good defense. And if he does reach that ceiling that you alluded to at the beginning of the conversation, like if there's a good chance he reaches that, it's obviously still a very high ceiling, and every team can use a scorer off the bench. And, 2-3 years down the road, I mean, like Nickeil Alexander-Walker is a free agent next year, so his role could increase as we move forward. Let's get into that next. Let's talk about his fit with Minnesota. And Sunny's we're going to turn the tables here. He's going to ask me a few questions about Terrence Shannon Jr. as a pro. We'll get to that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. You can find any sort of ticket you're looking for. It's not just sports either. Up to 60% off. Buy last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. You can save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. You can also toggle on the feature for all-in pricing that'll show you the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. Also, the Game Time ticket coverage means your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets for MLB or any other event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, turning the keys over to Sunny. We're going to talk a little bit about Terrence Shannon Jr. as a pro, and of course, add anything else in along the way that maybe we didn't get to in the first segment, Sunny. But take it away.
Sure, but first and foremost, let's kind of give me a quick cliff notes on the last maybe 2 seasons of the Minnesota Timberwolves, just so Illini fans who are now becoming Minnesota Timberwolves fans, and those of you who are new Timberwolves fans, definitely follow Ben at Locked On Timberwolves. Give us a little cliff notes of what kind of team Terrence Shannon Jr. is suiting up for.
Yeah, I mean, 2 years ago, going in, the Wolves were coming off of, like, if you go back 2 years, they were coming off of a season where they were the 6th seed in the West. They lost to Memphis in the first round. They had made the playoffs for the first time in a long time, the second time in 19 years at the time, which is crazy. And there was a lot of optimism going into last season. But the year got off to a bit of a tough start. They made the Rudy Gobert trade. So there was, for anybody that follows the NBA or even doesn't, it was widely thought of as a massive overpay for a guy who's about to be 30, playing 2 bigs with Rudy Gobert and Karl-Anthony Towns. But still, Anthony Edwards is so exciting, and everybody thought, like, hey, what could this be? Well, Gobert was banged up after playing in Eurobasket in the summer of 22, and Karl-Anthony Towns hurt his calf at Thanksgiving and missed 60-plus games. The team still ended up winning 42 games, getting the 8th seed after the play-in tournament, but had to play the Denver Nuggets in the first round, lost to the eventual champion Nuggets in 5 games in 2023. Last season, a lot of people's expectations had come back down for the Wolves. It was effectively the same roster coming back, and, traded a bunch of draft picks. They didn't have any incoming rookies that were going to play. And so there were a lot of people down on the Wolves going into last season. I was up on them in that I thought that they would be a playoff team. I didn't think they'd win 56 games. I thought they would win around 50, which was still more optimistic than most people. I thought they were probably the 4 or 5 seed in the West. They ended up getting the 3rd seed, and they were in the number 1 spot most of the season. Easily could have had the top seed in the West. Were relatively healthy other than Karl-Anthony Towns missing about a month in the spring with a knee issue. But Anthony Edwards took the leap. He became an all-star. Well, I guess it was a second all-star season. And was fantastic. Jaden McDaniels was great defensively. Rudy Gobert won Defensive Player of the Year. And it was really all about those players. Rudy getting comfortable, Cat staying healthy, and adopting a new role as a 4 and somebody who's guarding a little bit differently on defense, being asked to do some different things. But the offense struggled a little bit. It was middle of the pack for most of the season. Defensively, they were the best team in the league. It was actually only the second time in the last 20 years that there's been a gap that big between the best defense and the second best defense in the league in terms of defensive ratings. They were dominant defensively, but the offense was a little sluggish at times, lacked a little bit of pop, and defense is kind of their identity. So as we're going to talk about, Terrence Shannon's kind of a perfect fit. This is a team that won 56 games. The top, 7 of the top 8 guys in the rotation will be exactly the same next year, barring something shocking in the next few weeks of the offseason. So this team should win mid-50s games. They should compete for the top seed and are a legit finals contender going into next season.
So was Terrence Shannon Jr.'s name kind of on your guys' draft board, in all the mock drafts and whatnot? Is that the type of player you guys were kind of looking for?
I think so. And I was, well, for a couple of reasons. Certainly, I think it was actually ESPN. One of their last mocks did have him going to Minnesota. There were a couple of mocks that had him there. He was one of, I think, 10 or 12 players I previewed leading into the draft that the Wolves may be interested in. I think partly because he's an older college player and this is already a playoff team. They don't want to spend a ton of time developing somebody who potentially could be a rotation piece right away. And because he brings it transition. Like we talked about this last segment, the Wolves did not play fast enough at times last year. And they were a good shooting team. Like they had the 3rd best team 3-point percentage in the league, but they didn't take enough threes. So a guy who's going to be a volume 3-point shooter, play fast, and also have the body type and athleticism, and hopefully want to play really well defensively and kind of slot right into that mentality that they had on defense. It's kind of a perfect fit in that sense. Now, nobody had on their bingo card that the Wolves would trade up on draft night to pick 8 and take, Rob Dillingham from Kentucky. Right. And so I think we were all kind of thinking like, all right, who are they going to take at 27? They'll certainly be a rotation piece. Now, we can talk about exact role. I think he's going to be kind of on the edge of the rotation, but he fits in line with what they need, which is size on the wing. They love size on the wing. They needed more shooting, more volume shooting from outside the arc, and they needed to play faster and continue that defensive mentality. And I think Terrence Shannon Jr. should check all those boxes.
So do you foresee him being a rotational guy in his first year?
I think he'll be right on the edge. I think the Wolves have, 7 of the top 8 guys are back from last year. That's not going to change. Rob Dillingham would be certainly a rotation guy. They've basically already said he's our backup point guard. So that's 8. And then Joe Ingles, they just signed, and I mean, he didn't sign in Minnesota for the minimum to not play, and he's basically going to take that Kyle Anderson role, slow-mo, who was kind of that point forward off the bench. He's going to fill in that role. So that gets you to about 9 guys. And typically in an NBA season, your rotation that sees heavy minutes is closer to 9, but usually you're going to have 10 guys that play. So I really think it's Terrence Shannon Jr. and a couple of guys who have been around that are still younger players that will be kind of vying for those 10th man minutes, if you will. Some nights it might be 14 minutes if guys are in foul trouble. If somebody's banged up or misses or sits on a back-to-back, maybe he plays 20 minutes. Some nights, depending on the opponent and the matchup, he may get a DNP-CD and not see the floor at all. I think it's him. It's Josh Minot, who's going to be a third-year guy out of Memphis, who's a different player. He's more of he's not as much a perimeter threat as he is a defender and a rebounder and just a little bit of a bigger body. I think those two are probably, and then Leonard Miller, who's a little bit more of a point forward type, really plays 4/5. So I think it also could change based on the matchup, but I think they'll give him every opportunity to earn a slot in the rotation. And he'll certainly at some point next year be part of the Wolves rotation, even if it's not opening night. He's going to be an important part of what this team's trying to do.
What was the initial response from T-Wolves fans when, at the conclusion of night 1 of the NBA draft, when they came home with Gillingham and, Shannon?
I think overwhelmingly positive. I mean, the cost to move up to 8 to take Dillingham was not too prohibitive. It's, a pick swap and a 2031 pick. And by that point, like, hopefully this team's been to the finals and it won a championship, right? Like that's the goal. And so this team's also over the second apron, not to get too in the weeds on NBA cap nerd stuff, but like the short version is the Wolves can't sign anybody in free agency for more than the minimum. And so the only way you're going to make this team better over the next couple of years is through the draft. And they don't have very many picks because they traded them all for Rudy Gobert. So trading up with a future asset 7 years down the road to take a guy who's a consensus lottery pick and one of the best offensive players in the draft in Dillingham, and still getting a guy who was in the running for, player of the year in December, who averaged 20 plus points per game and fills some holes off your bench, coming out of that night with guys who even casual college basketball fans knew who both those guys were. And so coming out of the draft with those two players and that much more offensive punch and upside, because again, this is a team that went to the conference finals. I mean, they were 3 wins away from the finals last year, and the offense was middle of the pack at best. It was at times 18th, 19th in the league in terms of offensive rating. So to get 2 offensive players, and at least in the case of Shannon, somebody who's not going to hurt you defensively and may help you, is a big win.
So I guess, usually when in colleges their players are drafted, it tends to be on teams that are played poorly the season before. Illini fans are a little spoiled in this case, now being newly fans of the Minnesota Timberwolves. How close exactly would you say you guys are to winning that ultimate NBA championship?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think it could have happened last year. I think it was a combination of having never been there, and I mean, nobody on the Timberwolves had played that deep in their career. I think Conley got to the conference finals once, and Gobert had never been there. And so, like, just from a fatigue standpoint, which sounds like a cop-out, but it's a very real thing when you're used to playing till May 1 and you're playing till June 1. I think that played into it. And obviously, Luka Doncic had a crazy series, and they ran into a buzzsaw and tough matchup for Minnesota. Luka Doncic really was. This team's going to be basically the same. And the only guys that, like, obviously Mike Conley being a year older isn't great. And, Rudy Gobert being a year older, I mean, he's still in his early 30s, but Cat's in his prime. Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, those guys are only getting better. And so I think expectations next year are going to be in those mid-50s wins. It's going to be 55, 57, 59 wins, and certainly a top 4 seed in the West. And the West is tough. It didn't get any easier over the offseason, but this is absolutely a 50-plus win team. It's absolutely a home court team that has a shot at the finals. And if Anthony Edwards, he took the leap from like borderline all-star to like all NBA caliber player last year. And if he takes the leap to, I don't think there's any doubt he's got the ceiling of a top 3 player in the league. I don't think there's any question about that. If he can do that next year, this immediately is a finals contender. I think it is anyway, but it's a very serious one and is right up there with everybody else. I mean, other young teams in the West like Oklahoma City and Minnesota are going to be around for a while. Then you've got teams that are trying to retool and reload that are a little bit older. It's going to be a lot of fun. But I mean, you're right. Like a guy who is as good as Terrence Shannon was in college doesn't often go to a team that's already ready to compete for a championship. And that's exactly the type of team he's going to. All right, so there you have it. Great conversation with Sunny at Locked On Illini. I thought it was really good perspective on what Terrence Shannon did defensively at Illinois. I had seen a couple different scouting reports that kind of knocked what he'd done. The steal rate was down, but the context of guarding the best player and also being the top option, even if the ball wasn't in his hands a ton, and I've talked about that before, like he wasn't initiating a ton of offense for the Illini last 2 years. He was a beneficiary in transition. They ran stuff for him to get, come off of pin downs and get shot attempts and things like that. So, I mean, it's certainly understandable if there was a bit of some slippage in terms of his one-on-one defense. And if he could just wreak havoc, and that actually has been, I talked about this on the basketball party last week on the Wednesday basketball party that we do here on Locked On Wolves. And I've talked about it on regular Locked On Wolves show as well. If he's able to kind of dial in and be the guy that does that doesn't do it, not that does everything, but the guy who knows his role and is all over the place and just like wreaking havoc on both ends of the floor, getting steals, getting out in transition, getting dunks, getting trail threes in transition, sprinting to the corner, getting 3-point opportunities there, getting to the free throw line. It's a thing that Sunny brought up a couple different times, is his ability to get to the free throw line as well. He didn't shoot the ball great at the rim in college, but that's something that I think can grow. And also if he's drawing fouls, that matters a little bit less as long as he's getting to the free throw line. But again, lower usage type guy I should say lower usage, just less opportunities, less volume of opportunities at the NBA level when he's on a team with Anthony Edwards, Karl-Anthony Towns, and others. So completely agree with a lot of what Sunny said. I thought it was interesting insight on his defense, but also the mentality, the fact that he clearly improved throughout his career at Illinois, even if it was only those 2 seasons compared to what he did at Texas Tech for 3 years. I think that's really important to note and really, really good context, I think, for Wolves fans. And hopefully it gave some good context for Illini fans on Locked On Illini as well about the Wolves. All right. A couple quick Wolves notes that are out there from, I guess, mostly from Wednesday. The first one was Team Canada finalized their Olympic roster, which I thought was nothing really surprising there, except for a couple of Wolves-related notes. Now, it's a really good team. We knew that. Nickeil Alexander-Walker is on the team. And a familiar name that is not is Andrew Wiggins. He had withdrawn initially right before camp began. The Warriors called it mutual, but various reports have reported that Golden State was the party driving the decision, as often is the case when players are no longer in international competition. But there's other guys who aren't on the team, like Zach Edey, Shaedon Sharpe, Benedict Mathurin from the Pacers. Leonard Miller also was in their training camp, never was really considered to make the team, which makes sense given how stacked this team is. I mean, seriously, they've got SGA, they've got Jamal Murray, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Andrew Nembhard, RJ Barrett, Lou Dort. I'm just reading these in the order on Hoops Rumors, not in any particular order. Dylan Brooks, Melvin Eheim, Trey Lyles, Kelly Olynyk, Dwight Powell, and Khem Birch. So every one of those guys, except for Eheim, which I think I'm saying right, has played in the NBA. And then, Wiggins, Edey, Sharpe, Mathurin, and Miller all not going to be on the roster. Notably, this is also as much as a fixture as they've been in recent years on the international scene. They haven't actually been in the Olympics since 2000. Like this is the only time since 2000 they've been in the Olympics, because they've finally improved to that point on the international stage to qualify for the Olympics. So interesting, exciting that Alexander Walker's there. And of course, we know Joe Ingles is playing for Australia. We know that Rudy Gobert is playing for France. I don't think I'm missing anybody else besides Anthony Edwards, obviously played for Team USA. I don't have any thoughts, by the way, on the Anthony Edwards interview about him saying, like, it's just Ant being Ant. Like, Timberwolves fans have seen this before. It's not a headline for Wolves fans. Like, Ant saying he's the best player and he wants all the shots, but then also in the same interview saying, yeah, of course I'm going to pass to Steph and KD because those guys are great. Like, none of that is surprising. So let's not act like, I don't think any Wolves fans are acting like they're surprised. Nobody should be like too offended by that, because it's just Ant being Ant and all the guys on the team don't care. Like, it's whatever. And then the other thing is the Timberwolves promoted Matt Lloyd to GM. Of course, Matt Lloyd was the senior VP of basketball operations. He had ran the front office in Orlando. He was their interim GM, had also been their VP of basketball ops. And prior to that was in Chicago with the Bulls, back mostly when the Bulls were good, or at least I should say, I think it was more Tibbs era type Bulls teams. So Matt Lloyd was a finalist for the Charlotte role earlier this, I guess it would have been in spring when they were interviewing, or it was right around the end of the season. And he did not get the job there, but then he was offered a role. And this is according to John Krasinski over at The Athletic. Matt Lloyd turned down basically the role he had in Minnesota to go to Charlotte, decided to stay, and he gets the title. He gets the title bump from senior VP of basketball ops to general manager. Also in the thread on Twitter, John Krasinski reports that he is now officially number 2 behind Tim Conley, who of course is president of basketball ops, and Sachin Gupta is executive VP of basketball operations, which, as he also notes, it's collaborative. It doesn't really matter in terms of hierarchy, even though it is Conley, Lloyd, Gupta. So congrats to Matt Lloyd. Seems to be somebody that a lot of people respect. He's someone who gets brought up occasionally. I mean, like Ryan Russillo on his show, when he talks about basketball, he always talks about Lloyd along with Conley, for whatever that's worth. And I don't agree with all Russillo's opinions, but he's obviously plugged in on some level, and interesting that he always brings him up. Take that for what it's worth. So a little bit of Wolves news there to leave you with. Friday show, I'm going to get you ready. The Wolves actually play basketball tomorrow. Some version of the Timberwolves, at least 5 to 6 to 7 rostered players, 5 current guys, including the 2 rookies, including Jalen Clark. We get to see two-way signing Jesse Edwards. We get to see, we talked about him. If you missed Wednesday's show, I talked about him quite a bit. The big center on a 2-way deal. He'll play in Summer League. And then also, obviously, Daisha Nix, who was on a 2-way deal last year. Some familiar names from the Iowa Wolves. I talked a lot about it this week, but I'll give you kind of my last takeaways heading into Summer League on Friday. They play Friday afternoon, and I believe Sunday. So over the weekend, they'll have a couple games before my next show on Monday, so I can kind of unpack those first 2 games, key takeaways, things I liked and didn't like. But Friday will get you ready, leave you with kind of like what to watch for, and especially with a focus on the Josh Minotts, the Leonard Millers, the 2 rookies, and Jalen Clark, who haven't seen him play. So we got to be fair to him, but like interested to see what we see out of him too. So a lot to get to on Friday. That's what we'll do on Friday. A big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. And you can also follow on X at Locked On T Wolves, and also at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, CKEN. A reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. It's now also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Of course, the Locked On Wolves podcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.